Do you have tight hamstring going into that posterior pelvic tilt? So if someone is standing here in neutral, you just felt that tension. I'm just moving my lower back, or maybe you have a client that claims they have tight hamstrings. They're constantly feeling that tension on the backside of their leg and they think they need to stretch it. Let's talk about this a little bit deeper. I'm going to take this band here and I'm going to step on it just to kind of give you a visualization of what I'm talking about. I have a pretty neutral pelvis for the most part. So if I'm standing to the side, this is me. If my pelvis was a cereal bowl, I'm not dumping it out the front. I don't have an excessive anteriorly tilted pelvis, which a lot of people do. So if someone is standing here in neutral, think about the tension on the front side of this band and the tension on the back side of this band. If I'm in an anteriorly tilted position, so I'm here, I'm pouring cereal out the front, think about where this pelvis is, where that hamstring's on the back side of the pelvis, and think about it getting lifted. Do you see that more tension on the back side of the band now? That's something that we should be aware of, because when we're asking our athletes to stretch their hamstrings, or maybe they're doing it on their own to relieve some tension, it might be doing more harm than good if you're pulling on something that is already extended, already feels tense, when maybe we should add some movement and just be aware of what's going on with the pelvis. So when you're trying to get someone to understand the importance of the pelvis on the hamstrings, I found this is a good tool to do. We'll just have someone stand and we'll just have them bend over and put their hands on their legs. The second someone goes in this position, they probably already feel the tension in their hamstrings from the position of their pelvis. So now from here, I'll have them point their butthole to the ground, almost like I'm trying to shine a flash hole right to the ground. And if you ask them, hey, do you feel this in your hamstrings? They're probably like, no, not at all. Now I want you to go into an anteriorly tilted pelvis. So I'm taking my butthole now and I'm pointing it behind me like I'm shining a flashlight. And they go there and they're like, oh, wow, I feel that tension in my hamstrings. They may even say something like, oh, I felt my hamstrings kick on. You just felt that tension because we're using our pelvis to create leverage on that tissue. So if they're feeling it here, and then you think about standing up and they're constantly walking around on a daily basis, if you're someone that wears like high heels all day at work, you're constantly in that position, of course you're going to have tension on that posterior chain. So here are some things we can do to get some movement in that area. For starters, let's get into a quadruped position. So from here, kind of rock back a little bit, and what you would think of a normal cat camel, I don't want you to move your mid-spine or your upper back. I just want you to think about your pelvis and your lower back and the relationship between the two. So from here, I'm thinking about my pelvis the way I just said. I'm shining that flashlight up nice and tall with my butthole, and then I'm turning it underneath me. But I'm not trying to involve my mid or lower back. I'm just moving my lower back and my pelvis. So I'm just moving my lower back and my pelvis. Sometimes just getting someone into this position, making them feel awareness of what their pelvis is capable of, can help them understand that relationship a little bit better. When it comes to the hamstring, I love easing in and out of it. So playing with the tension with that long tissue. So for this, I like to rock forward in the hips, and then I'm just gonna pull my toe up as I rock back. So I pull my toe up, kind of push my knee down, but not lock it back, and I'm gonna feel this tension light up. So I'm just kind of easing in and out of that tissue. So almost think like you're almost getting into a stretch, but you're staying moving. Almost think like kinetic stretching. I'm just kind of easing in and out of it. Just think about flossing that tissue. Something like 8 to 10 reps here might feel pretty good because you're having that tissue do something that maybe you don't do normally, whether you sit all day, you stand all day, whatever it may be. So I'm using a massage device here. I've also used car bumpers, good surface area, a lot of friction. It's gonna bring some heat and that vibration. Tissue likes that sometimes, especially on that hamstring. But what I like with this is sometimes you see people kind of go consistently moving back and forth. I like to use my leg to create tension, and this is just kind of bringing attention to the specific spot. So if I apply this to the hamstring and I'm just holding the spot, now I'm gonna think move my leg. So my leg is what gives the tension. As I extend that leg away, I'm gonna feel that tension, and I'm just kind of moving this massage device to kind of bring some friction, some vibration, bring some blood flow to that area. No different if I had a car buffer, I just have it on the back side of my leg, and I'm just extending this leg. You can also do this sitting on a bench, where you're just sitting there, standing, hitting that spot, covering it, and you're just extending that leg in and out, just keeping it on a spot, using your leg to move rather than just rubbing that device on it. So we've talked about the pelvis and moving tissue. I like going to a standing position because from here, once again, I get to play with the leverage on that tissue by my body weight only. So from here, I'll just think kind of easing in and out of that single leg deadlift, trying to separate my thighs as much as possible, and you'll feel that tension light up in the hamstring. But once again, I'm giving it enough of an input that I'm not just passively stretching, I'm actively moving through ranges of motion, challenging tension, hopefully giving enough of an input to leave a lasting result. Just moving in and out. Once again, you can load this if you wanted to with a dumbbell, a kettlebell, whatever it may be, but I'm just loading that tension, maybe 8 to 10 reps each side, just playing with that. Now that we did that standing movement, trying to get that separation of thighs, playing with that tension in the hamstring, another one I like to add is something like this. So I'm going to use a bench, but you can easily use a corner of a wall, whatever you may have. But think about the separation that's going on with my thighs, and I'm thinking double chin, nice and flat, lower back on the ground, almost going into that posterior pelvic tilt, squeezing this glute. And from here, I'm going to bring this leg up, and I'm just going to drop. As I drop, I'm trying to keep my lower back flat on the ground, not arching my back, controlling that reach, meanwhile driving this right leg as seen here into the bench. Controlling this tension, just playing around with it. Obviously, to progress this a little bit more, you can drop that leg a little bit faster, sync up your breathing, play with that tension. I hope some of those tips help. Remember, when it comes to the hamstrings, just because you feel tension there does not mean that's the root cause of it. It may be coming from the pelvis, so let's get that pelvis moving, and then let's play with the tension of that hamstring muscle group.